So I don't always jump on the current trends and videos that a lot of people are going around doing on BookTube, but this top books based on or my top books based on Goodreads. I thought pretty interesting because after I looked at my list and I thought it might be pretty fun and also slightly embarrassing. So what's going on, Average Joes? I am Joe, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you again for coming in and watching my videos. And to all my new subscribers, thank you as well for subscribing. And even old subscribers, thank you all for subscribing and watching my content. So just a brief intro. I do mostly fantasy, sci-fi, a lot of some mystery thrillers, a little bit of nonfiction here and there. I talk about Kindle Unlimited things. And today I'm going to do my top books. I don't know if I'm going to do 10, depending on how they're ordered, but top books according to Goodreads from what I've read. So it's going to look at books that I've read and their top Goodreads ratings are and see what they are in order. And I took a peek at this before, and it's gonna be illuminating. It's gonna be a little sus, but it's gonna be a little bit of fun. So as always, if you're liking these videos, like and subscribe if you haven't already. And there's some links down below. One of them is that I like to highlight every once in a while is a Kindle Unlimited list link, and that is not a buy me books link. These are books that I have my eyes on that are available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to go, if you have Kindle Unlimited and you're looking for books to read, go there, check those out. But it's not a buy me books link. It is just a hey, these are ones that are on my radar, so they can be on your radar too now. So I'm going to do a screen record while I record here, and then I'm going to put it up on my screen as I go. So starting off at the top, let's get my recording going. And so starting off up the top, man. Okay, so Seven Realms series. As you can see, my rating, I did a 3 out of 5, but it is rated at a 4.65. This is my highest rated book, apparently, according to Goodreads, which is kind of ridiculous. And I guess I should have separated this. I wonder how it would be individualized with the book. So this might be kind of skewed because I guess if you read an entire series and like it enough, you're probably going to stick around to the end. I'm someone that if I've already read the first 2 books and I was still kind of iffy and one of the main characters is super annoying, like one of the worst female protagonists, I just wanted to finish it out because the books aren't very long. So I'm like, well, I've gone this far. I need to see how it ends and to see if she remains as terrible as she is. And she kind of did. One of the most tropiest bad female protagonist. At times, she was really good, and that's also what made it so frustrating. It's not like she was bad the entire time. It was that she had glimmers of being really good and really strong, and then times of being completely naive and an idiot. And when you have all these YA books that um give them flack for their love triangles, she was in a love pyramid, which means she was getting the affection of and stringing on 3 guys, not just 2, 3 guys. That was super annoying. Two of those guys kidnapped her at one point, separate times. So she was terrible, and a lot of her decisions and everything was terrible. But there was enough in this world that it was decent enough. There was decent amount of magic, which is kind of cool. And I know there's a follow-on series as well. I think the first book's called Flamecaster or something, but because this one had such a bad taste in my mouth from the main character, I haven't moved on to the other one. But I know a lot of people do like Cindy Williams Chima and her books. But again, I probably should have just done. This is how I read it. This is how I bought it on Kindle. So I have the 4-bound edition because it was cheaper. So that's how I rated it on here. So that's the first one. All right, number 2. I'll do 2. So I'm gonna, if they're the same series that are on this list, which this series is on here multiple times, this is just gonna count as one, and it just happens to be the next 2. So Keepers of the Lost City, as you can see, book 4 and 5. This is a middle grade series, and to touch on this, I think it's middle grade. I think are always going to be really highly rated on Goodreads, and that's because I don't think their audience, like middle grade people, they probably don't have Goodreads or care about Goodreads. They don't care about book goals or rating books. They're just reading the books, and or the parents are reading the books with them and the parents are rating them, or adults are reading them as like a throw in middle grade. And it's like, oh, hey, that was good as a middle grade. So like, I feel like these are going to be skewed because it's a middle grade book and you're either going to look at it through the context of, oh, my kid loved it, so I'll give it 5 stars, or I think it was good for a middle grade. Like I rated it at a 4 and a 5. It is good for a middle grade, but like if I put it against, this is like if this as a 5 star compared to my adult fantasy 5 stars wouldn't even come close. So that's how I kind of think of it in rating as well, like in context of those audiences and parameters. But the good things about Keepers of the Lost City is that the world building is fantastic. It is very magical, very atmospheric. Those are the best parts of it, and there's always new magic being encountered. The plots are fairly fast paced and even slightly complex, and to where I don't always see what's going to happen next. She does throw in plenty of twists, so it is very good in that regard. The characters themselves are the annoying parts. Like that's why I bump it down sometimes and why I spread them out. Not only because they're super easy to read, but like the characters can be really annoying, but they're also like 12 and 13 years old. So it kind of makes sense for that regard. It's just eye rolling a lot of times, but it's just like whatever. It's a middle grade. So atmosphere, magic, great for those things. It's a middle grade. So you get what so it's fine to be up there. Next, Time Wave series. I've mentioned this one a few times. And although I gave book 3 4 stars, the book 1 I think is the best book. I've mentioned Time Waves a few times. It is set in the future to where somebody invented time travel, and only that corporation, that company has access to time travel, but people will pay this company to go back in time to acquire lost relics, like lost manuscripts, lost statues, paintings, things that were lost in their current time, whether through war, any kind of destruction, and acquire them for them, steal them, and bring them to the future for their private collection. So it's like heist slash time travel, historical elements. It's a lot of that mixed in one, and it was really, really cool. The first book was probably the best one. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The other two are second book is okay. Third book gets better again. And that series is also continued. I think at least the next one, maybe even the next 2 books have come out this year. So it might be one that I actually continue at some point in time, but it is very good. And it is also very good because 2 main characters, male, female, platonic relationship. There is no attraction, love triangle, anything like that. There's not that type of sort of tropiness to it. There's actually just like a regular friendship. All right, Keepers of the Lost again, as I said, and then Harry Potter. So again, with middle grades, and Harry Potter's Harry Potter. So I'm not really going to say much about that and I probably will say Prisoners seems to be the favorite Harry Potter book out of all of them. Might be the one that gets darkest first. I know it's my wife's favorite, and honestly, this is actually where I've left off on the series. I haven't read book 4, 5, or 4 or 5 yet. Those are the only 2 Harry Potter books I haven't read. Okay, Mistborn. Not a surprise this is up here again. You see the binding, Mistborn books 1 through 3, so it's not just the first book or anything like that. Because this is how I read it on Kindle. I bought the bound edition, I don't know, omnibus edition, whatever you want to call it, but all 3 books into one Kindle book. So then that's how I read it. And yeah, 5 stars. It is Mistborn. It is fantastic. So I would definitely agree that is on here. And it's not like I disagree that these are on here. Like the middle grade, I gave that context. Mistborn 100% deserves to be on here. It is always touted as a top series, and I think it was in my top 5 fantasy series of all time. It was up there. Either way, because of how complex the magic system is, and how I just love when a series starts off interesting enough, and then it becomes more and more complex, and there's more and more depth, and that's just so great to see. All right, here we go. Next one, Mortal Instruments. I don't know why it has the 1 to 4 on here. I think this is one of those where when I started doing Goodreads more, I was going backlogs of like, okay, what have I read in the past? And I remember I did audiobooks of Mortal Instruments years ago while having a terrible commute to work. And I felt they were entertaining enough. I definitely used that 30-second skip button a bunch in those because of the gooey-eyed, lovey-dovey, whatever parts that you just know that the typical annoying YA romance parts. The world is really grand and really great, and I think that is the world had enough interest to it for those of you who have read the Mortal Instruments and those series. We've continued on and read 2 other books of another follow-on trilogy, and like I do like a lot about the world and a lot about the environment and certain magics and stuff. It's just the child aspect of it. The kids are the kids are the annoying part, but everything else, the world and the magic is very good. And that's kind of the reason why I read those. I can kind of gloss over some of those parts. And like I said, I was hitting that 30-second skip button. Kings of Heaven, whoop whoop. I was hoping this one was going to be higher. And that is because this is on top of my favorite series. And yeah, Ash and Sand series is amazing. And just like with Mistborn, it gets more and more complicated, more and more depth as you go. Like in the first book, you think you know the story of two linear plots coming together. Completely wrong. Once you read the second book, you'll see that it's completely wrong about that. They are in a sense, but they're also not at all. So it is really, really great. I definitely highly recommend it. It was my, I think, number 2 or number 3 series on my all-time top fantasy series list. Very dark, very adult, grim dark, definitely. But it is so worth it, and the payoff is so great. And I've seen interviews with Richard Nell on Steve Talks About Books, and he's talked about how his world is just going to keep growing. So he's already released the next book in this world. So it's kind of book 4, but it's not. It's the next book in the next trilogy. First book in the next trilogy in this world, and he has a roadmap to continue to build this world, to basically industrialize it. So you're starting off, and it's his like early Renaissance in this area, in this world, and he wants to build up this universe, continue to into like an industrial era, which I think is going to be really, really awesome, especially if he continues for how good the Ash and Sand trilogy was. Tiamat's Wrath, so the Expanse, fantastic. I just read this one last month. I took like a year and a half or so long break from the Expanse series, and it was just getting too bogged down with sci-fi stuff at times. There was just a lot of moving pieces, and I even forgot some of the stuff that was going on. But Tiamat's Wrath was fantastic, and this is the last book that is currently out. Book 9 comes out in like 2 months, I think, and that will wrap up the series. So we will actually get a finish to a book series before the show wraps up. Just saying, Game of Thrones. So Tiamat's Wrath, fantastic. I can't really say much for that for spoilers, but the Expanse is really, really good. Space, I don't know what constitutes a space opera. People just throw that term around. I don't know what a space opera means, but it is a very grand space series that is at times very science heavy, but it's also told in a way very fantastic. Also, the narrator is one of the best narrators for audiobooks out there. If I had a top narrator list, he would be on it. It is Jefferson Mays, I believe. He is the narrator for The Expanse. So if you want to read those books and you like audiobooks, highly recommend that and the narrator for that. Okay. So we have Exiles next. Keepers. Let's see where are we at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Here's the next bit. All right. Throne of Glass. Yes, I have read all of Throne of Glass. That's all I've read for Sarah J. Maas. And while I agree with most of people's Sarah J. Maas criticism and all of her either graphic or just unnecessary sex scenes and the romances that she has in her books, again, that 30-second skip button is fantastic. I did this also on audiobook around the same time as the Mortal Instruments, because my commute, I was at one point a while ago, for a year, I was commuting to work, and I had about 3 hours of commute time per day. So I was going through audiobooks, and I just wanted to listen to whatever I could. So I knocked out Throne of Glass, basically. And while there are some bad books and some, I mean, I rated these 5 stars because this is also early in my reading experience. This is 6 years ago or so. This is a long time ago. This says 2017, but I think I read it in 2016, 15 or 16. Because again, I just went back and started processing stuff through Goodreads. Anyway, I enjoyed a lot of it. There were some not so great parts because of all the romance and the relationships, but there were still some really, really cool parts. Some of the magic, some of the creatures. I think the best storylines were the witches, or I don't remember the witch name, but the witches and the prince. Those two always had my attention full on. Selena was just like middle of the road, okay, sometimes cool, other times. So she was okay. So Ronan was just whatever. And so it was The Witches for sure had the coolest storyline, and I still think that they are really, really awesome. I've been thinking about making a skeletons in my closet uh, video, and Throne of Glass would totally come up on there because I've never mentioned it on the channel, and not many people talk about it or Sarah J. Maas in like the best light. Not that it's bad at all. I think it's just kind of one of those like Nickelback things that people just love to hate on. But and for good reason for a certain amount of it. But I think Throne of Glass still had a lot of really cool parts of it, and it's weird that it has a lot of the YA tropes, but is also very adult. Definitely, I would classify this in the adult range, but there's plenty of annoying parts. But I think the witch's storyline definitely made it good. Stone of Light. So Threadlight. I just read this one recently. Zach Argyle. Now I'd say there's probably not that many reviews for this, and that could be why it is so high. I know some people have been excluding 71 ratings. Okay, so that's pretty low. But as you can see, even the first book, 245 ratings at about a 4. So it is still very good. And I did enjoy that a lot. Stones of Light was way better. It was, I think, a huge step forward. Book 2 compared to book 1. Book 1, I think it was just a lot of buildup. It was a lot of introducing to the world. But book 2 definitely took off and added so much to it, and so many twists that I did not see coming. It was fantastic. So if you, and this is a Kindle Unlimited book, self-published, so I would highly recommend you checking out Threadlight. And it seems these two came out pretty soon, back to back, so I'd imagine it wouldn't be long for book 3 to come out. I could probably even send Zach a message on Discord, because he's active in one or two of the Discords that I'm a part of, so very interested in continuing that series. John Gwynn. Yes. Okay, so I kind of figured his would be up here. I knew his get really high ratings, especially the last book in a series, because again, this is book 3 in his follow-on trilogy from Faithful and the Fallen, and that also makes it book 7 in the Banished Lands world. So I think if you've gotten to this book, this is basically book 7 in a book in a series, and with that much buy-in, you're gonna love it. I don't think you read 7 books of a series and rate something 3 stars. So I mean, maybe if you get to a point where it's like, oh, well, that was just a disappointing ending, yeah, sure, you might bump it down 1 or 2, but for the most part. And Time of Courage, it's heavily debated whether the final battle in Wrath or Time of Courage, which one's better. And I go back and forth also. Even when I first finished the Time of Courage, my initial thoughts were this was better than Wrath. But then looking back, I think Wrath was still better, but it's still really hard. And I think there were some really awesome moments in A Time of Courage, and there were some really shocking moments too. Some like throw your book down, frustrated moments. It was really, really good. Yeah, obviously I'm going to encourage everybody to read Faithful and the Fallen, because that comes first. You shouldn't read Blood and Bone before Faithful and the Fallen. Like I said, this is basically book 7. Highly, highly, highly recommend though. The Toll, the Roaming, book 2. I thought, yeah, it was pretty good. This is the zombie apocalypse. I did a why you should read The Roaming. It's a zombie apocalypse book. It's also on Kindle Unlimited. They're very short. Books 1 and 2, they're like 220, 230 pages, something like that. They're very good. I don't think there's going to be many ratings on these books. So 13 ratings. Yeah. So that's kind of like asterisk on that one. It's a zombie apocalypse book. I gave it a 4. I have not read this book. I don't know why that's on there. Time Waves again, Faithful and Fallen again. Okay, so this pretty much wraps up, I think. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so I actually did 12. Okay, whatever. So yeah, then the next one, Time Waves and Wrath. So these are also the same series, so that's fine. So that was my top books according to Goodreads, and slightly illuminating. So there's a lot of those older books on there that were, and the YA and middle grade books that I think just get a bump because of the audience, and because I think it's easier to be less critical. And even like my ratings were 4s and 5s for a lot of those. But I read those, 6 years ago, before I even got into adult fantasy and before I even got into reading a whole bunch. So while I don't really want to go back and change any ratings because at the time that's how I felt. So I'm not going to like penalize it because I've grown, my taste has grown. So I don't really care about that. And then the group bindings as well. Like, these are, you're rating it. If you're reading the entire series, you're probably going to rate it higher versus if you just stop in the middle. So that's all my top books according to Goodreads. I do want to do, and I'm going to do a worst books according to Goodreads as well. I haven't seen anybody do that, but I'm very interested. I imagine those videos are going to be coming out soon as well. But I'm going to record that as well. So, what are some of your top books? Like, just go on your Goodreads, see what they are, see if there's any surprises. Let me know, and tell me, let me know what you think about my top books, or if there's any surprises that you saw that I read that I just haven't talked about. Let's chat more in the comments.